Welcome to the news and why it matters. Happy Friday. I am Sarah Gonzalez, joined by Stu Bergier, Jason Buttrell, and Jason Howerton. Thanks for being here. Stu, what's the top story for you?
The Supreme Court and how it works and how it should not ever work.
Okay, Jason.
If you're one of those waiting with bated breath to see all this, Kenneth Starr style salacious material that's about to come out in the Mueller Report, be prepared for the most epic letdown ever.
Okay, Jason Howerton.
AOC is I think, has more influence in the Democratic Party than somebody like Nancy Pelosi today, and she is coming for your guns.
Lot to get into there. First, we want to thank our sponsor, Relief Factor. So, Jason Buttrell, I know you've had a good experience with Relief Factor because you're like super old and you're in the military, and so your joints just don't want to work anymore.
Yeah, especially if you're in the military. Because that's where I'm pulling from this. It tears up your knees, it tears up your back, your shoulders, everything, and it's like pain that just never goes away.
Right.
And I was struggling with this for a long time, and it's that kind of contributes to just the depression that I think a lot of veterans have, because the one thing that you can have that connection with the life you once had was to continue to keep your body in shape like you once did. We can't do that if you're all torn up. My knees were shot. I could not run my usual 3 miles a day. Could not do it anymore. I was very it was depressing. It really was. Started taking Relief Factor. Really, for me, I think it's different for multiple people do, but I did a 3-week quick start pack. After a week and a half, I was already back up to running my 3 miles. It was amazing.
That's about when I started seeing a difference in my experience as well. I was in a car accident and had some protruding and herniated discs. And it's same thing. It's just all day, just constantly in pain. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't find anything that worked. And it was about a week and a half for me as well.
I would say too, I think I liked your combination of those words, protrudiating.
I know.
That's not what they should just call it.
Protruding.
Protruding.
You're welcome, medical community. But it worked for me as well. And 70% of the people who buy that 3-week quick start pack, I'm having problems with words today.
They're not easy.
It might be kind of a crucial thing to be able to do when you're.
You've been talking with me for 2 hours, so I'm rubbing off on you.
That's why. But 70% of those people who buy it, they go on to keep ordering more. It's working for the majority of people. It can work for you. You will not know unless you get that 3-week quick start pack for $19.95. Go to relieffactor.com, or you can call 800-500-8384 if you're one of those people who, use cell phones for their original purpose of voice calls. All right, Stu, top story.
One of the craziest moments, I think, since I started doing, radio and TV happened in 2012 when we were on the air during the radio show and the Supreme Court decision about Obamacare came down. And it was very, I think conservatives were relatively optimistic about after seeing the oral questioning. It seemed like it was in favor. You had what in theory was 5 conservative justices. The blatantly unconstitutional idea of an individual mandating that people buy insurance. It's something that there's no precedent for it in American history. So I know you at least had some confidence. I had the typical pessimism, and which I don't think things work out for me. So I kind of thought theoretically it wasn't going to go well. But so as this broke on the air, I remember, I'm scrolling through the reading, trying to read it as fast as I can to understand what's going on. Every website in America, Drudge Report and Breitbart and all these, mainstream sites are all reporting that it was overturned. There was an issue at the beginning where everyone thought it was overturned initially, and I'm reading it, and I'm like, I don't think. Just because John Roberts wrote it doesn't mean that it's overturned. And it was just a crazy moment. And ever since then, I've been somewhat obsessed with trying to figure out what the hell happened. His ruling didn't make any sense. It almost seemed at times that it was written to overturn it, but that was not the conclusion. Mm-hmm. It's a really strange thing. Anyway, there's a book coming out now about John Roberts. And one of the sections that was released today by CNN actually ran an excerpt of this book. And it is about basically the backstory. I find it completely fascinating, and it's really also really frustrating. Just to kind of go through a little bit of the story, after they heard all the arguments, they went back, and the 9 justices took an initial vote kind of behind closed doors. And the initial vote came out 5-4 against Obamacare. So it would have been overturned. Roberts was on what I would say, the correct side of that ruling. After they went through all of this, they got to the second part of this, which was the Medicaid expansion. And the Medicaid expansion was kind of this, it wasn't talked about as much. But they voted on that, and Roberts was on the liberal side of that part of it. So it was 5-4 against what I would say the right decision is on the Medicaid expansion. So after this all happens, Roberts gets kind of into his own, this is at least the reporting. I've always assumed it was a conspiracy theory, like someone had pictures of him doing something. But Roberts kind of decides he doesn't want the entire law to fall. So the individual mandate, he was against that going away, believed it was unconstitutional, but then thought, I don't want the whole law to go away. And the reasoning is really, really frustrating to me. This is a quote from the book. A pro-business conservative, he understood the importance of the insurance industry to U.S. businesses. That's not your freaking job as a Supreme Court justice to figure out what you think is good for U.S. businesses. It's to interpret the Constitution of the United States of America.
Yeah, being a pro-business conservative has nothing to do with
not your law. Yeah, exactly. He also says he was genuinely concerned about invalidating an entire law that had been approved through a democratic process to solve the intractable health care problem. Again, that's a little closer, kind of, to your job, but in reality, you're a Supreme Court justice. Look at the Constitution. His 4 fellow conservatives believed that the individual mandate was going down. It should take the whole law with it, which I think I would agree with that as well. Roberts wrote the decision, and it was going down the road that this was going to be overturned. Roberts then just tried to persuade Kennedy to flip to his side and say, okay, we'll get rid of the individual mandate, but we'll keep the entire law. Now, this part of it is bizarre because Kennedy, who's usually the guy who was, very shaky on conservative decisions, said he was puzzled and then put off that Roberts was coming after him in this way. So then Roberts decided instead to go to the liberals and talk to Kagan and Breyer and make essentially a deal, saying, I will vote with you on the individual mandate if you then vote on the conservative side of the Medicaid part. So Roberts, who initially came down on the conservative side of the mandate and the liberal side of Medicaid, flip-flopped on both decisions so that he didn't have to shoot down this law. And I could go on about this because I'm so infuriated about it forever, but let me give you this last part. And this is again going to the reasoning, and this is not what the Supreme Court is supposed to do. He says, let's see, do I have the quote up here? Yeah, viewed only through a judicial lens, his moves were not consistent and his legal arguments were not entirely coherent, but he brought people and their different interests together.
Oh, good.
Now, that is not what you're supposed, I mean, to me, it's almost borderline like an impeachable offense if this is true. Now, this is an account from an author. It's not a conservative author who was mad about the ruling. It's just a, historian. But I mean, surely we all understand that the Supreme Court justice's job is not to bring people together. It has nothing to do. You should never enter your thought of what your legacy is, of what you think this might do as far as how people think about the Supreme Court. It shouldn't have anything to do with whether you think you can make people sing kumbaya and be friendly to one another. Your job is to look at something in a constitutional manner and decide whether the United States government, in a country that's supposed to be free, is allowed to force people make you a citizen that is not in good standing if you don't purchase a particular product. Obviously, that is not unconstitutional, and the fact that he came down in that way is embarrassing. It's honestly a disgrace. I mean, Roberts has been not terrible on every decision, but reliably bad. And this is back in the Pat and Stu days. We did give him an emergency induction into the douche Hall of Fame because of this particular ruling.
This is terrifying. It really is, especially when you consider everything that's coming up pretty soon. Mm-hmm. Like if like the one saving like grace that we thought is okay, well at least we have even if they get a supermajority of the Senate and we get some crazy like a Bernie Sanders type president, at least we got the Supreme Court. That's the one bastion. The last line of defense. But if this is true, then that is completely blown out of the water. If that's how they're making decisions, it's basically every single thing that people say that is wrong with the Supreme Court. Oh, they're biased. Oh, they're voting with the president that voted them in. It pretty much proves that that's the case.
I mean, it really is amazing. I mean, because this is the one body that's supposed to not have anything like this happening, right? Like if you're in the Senate, these guys go out to drinks and they make their stupid deals. We all understand that. Supreme Court, I would rather have them all listen in isolation booths and never talk to each other. In fact, they can't leave until they make the decision.
I'm surprised that y'all are so surprised.
Yeah, no, I'm not surprised.
These are people, right?
Yep.
They're people, and this is why every institution is so flawed.
Yes.
Because they're people. You don't think Roberts got a call from somebody, maybe it wasn't Obama personally, but someone who's in his ear and who's influential, and there's all that. That's what happens. That's what's going on. So I'm not shocked at all by that. In fact, I'd be, if it was like everybody did their thing and made their own decisions, I'd be like, wow, that's really impressive.
But
it never happens
what
anymore.
they're supposed
it's what
to
they're
be
supposed to
doing.
do in a perfect world, but we know that we
this
live there.
is why they're lifetime appointees. I mean, I think who was it that proposed recently, or said they were going to propose term limits to Supreme Court justices? That was one of the radical Cory Booker. I mean, no. If they're worried about having to raise money for for whatever, if they're worried about, oh crud, I have to get this done for my legacy before I have to leave here and I'm gone. I mean, no, this is not what you want. You want them to be completely as biased if you can, or at least set the system up to where they at least have the opportunity to be unbiased and just go off the Constitution.
Take an opportunity to actually, because I can actually make sports references here and people will understand them for one freaking time on the show. There's a book called Scorecasting, which goes into trying to figure out, it's kind of like Freakonomics for sports. It's a great book if you like sports. But one of the things they try to tackle is why does home field advantage a thing?
Yeah.
How does that actually happen? What's the purpose? And they go through a bunch of different ways of trying to figure it out. And what they kind of come down to at the end is the majority of home field advantage is related to the referees being influenced by the crowd. That is actually the majority of it.
It's not noise.
It's not
I know,
noise.
That's what I would have thought.
I know they went through all of these options, and there might be some small piece, but the majority of the entire thing was that and they did this with things like pitch tracking, right? Where the ref or the umpire would make calls that benefited the home team slightly more often, just enough that over a long period of time, games tilted that way, and that is this type of thing I kind of would expect out of the Supreme Court. They are umpires, right? They are referees. They are supposed to sit here and say, okay, yes and no, black and white, easy issues. We're talking about the Constitution of the United States. And I can understand there being some influence by society. I understand that there's some of that human element. There always is going to be that. But it's just, this is not a tough one. And the idea that, Roberts, who is a guy that we know understands it. We know he understands it. In fact, if this report is accurate, he actually ruled the correct way the first time, and then to reverse yourself based on these other things is something that you'd think as a Chief Justice you'd take pride in not doing. You almost want to be the guy, Scalia does this all the time, and Clarence Thomas does this all the time. He talks about free speech is really, really important. In fact, even when people say the N-word, and he types out the N-word in his dissent, and says even when they say that, we protect it. He's standing up even though he knows it's it would not be beneficial to him, and he does not think it's a good thing. That is what I expect out of the Supreme Court. But you're right, we're never going to get it. Yeah.
But it sounds to me like one of the most important decisions ever was based on an opinion of one person. Basically, the personal opinion of one person. Now that is a big problem.
Yeah. All right, back in a minute.
Let's talk sports. So, the NFL draft coming up.
Jason Buttrell, what do you say we kick these two guys off the show?
I can't concentrate on what I want to talk about now.
There's too much Cowboys hate going on at this table off air.
We're just the Supreme Court. We're just making judgments.
This is your show. You should ban that type of language.
We don't do bans here.
But we should start.
We'll start now. All right, Buttrell, the Mueller Report.
Yeah, there's been several sources out there that are talking to the media, apparently, and take that with a grain of salt, because sources lately have been often wrong. But they're telling people that there's going to be no new indictments coming from the Mueller Report, which is interesting, because if that is true, then you're not going to get all this stuff if you're waiting, with bated breath to get all of this salacious information, like the Kenneth Starr report. That means you're not going to get any of that. And just a really quick, back in history, when Kenneth Starr did his report on Bill Clinton, the rules were different. Yeah. At that time, he was an independent counsel. It was basically meant it was hands off. It's all you, bro. You do it. Take all the time you need. Do whatever you have to do. It's all on you. And then give us your report. Well, they saw the error in the ways of that, and they were like, well, okay, maybe he was, given a little bit, too much leash on that, and we don't want basically this special counsel report to turn into a Steele dossier opposition research type thing that can just be picked apart and used politically against him, even if it didn't, go towards, like an actual chargeable crime. So now the special counsel has been put under the Justice Department. So it's in the Justice Department has direct oversight into the special counsel. So it doesn't matter if Mueller finds all of this information that sounds like it could be give the appearance of guilt, even if it does. And actually, he can, as far as I understand it, he can put all of that stuff in the report. Mm-hmm. Now the issue with it is whatever the Attorney General gets is not going to be what the rest of us can see. Now, all he can report on is kind of like a basic outline of, okay, let's say there are 4 indictable offenses here. Then he'll put those details, those 4 indictable charges, with a little bit of context underneath of each little offense. Now, all that other stuff, salacious, stuff that might appear guilty, all that stuff, will be stricken and not even put in it. Mm-hmm. Now, just imagine if there is no indictable charges, like what their sources are saying. Then literally the Mueller report will be a cover page and a signature page at the bottom of it, because there will be nothing else that they can legally put on there. Yeah. They can't.
Well, I mean, they do have a lot of indictments already, right? Those will all be included for sure. The stuff that's already kind of come out, the Papadopoulos and the Manafort and the Russians and all that.
Which we've already seen it.
Yeah,
we might already know it, but I mean, that's still it's not going to be an empty report.
I'm going to drink myself into a stupor once this investigation is over. I'm so tired of hearing about it, to be honest with you. At this point,
it feels like 500 years.
It feels like 1,000 years.
It's oddly shorter than a lot of the other ones.
Like the
Kenneth Starr one was way longer than this.
I guess it feels longer when you're told every single day that the president's going down today. This is the end. The walls are closing in. How many times have I heard that phrase? I'm so done.
So the problem is it's not going to end. So if there's no new indictments, and regardless, this won't end because did they already pass the resolution that the House passed the resolution that says you have to show us?
It's not binding though. They don't have to show.
It don't matter because it's illegal.
It don't matter. It don't matter.
It don't.
There's a little spice there.
You cannot show.
You are a fellow POC. Right? Talking about that
around the world and back. You literally can't show information that was gathered for a grand jury. Can't do it.
And they said too, one of the interests they're worried about was they don't want what happened with Comey and Hillary to happen. In that, Comey came out and said, "Yeah, we're not indicting her, but here's a list of 714 things she did that were terrible."
Yeah.
They don't want to do that. They're trying to avoid that.
And that was the issue with Comey breaking precedent and doing that without consulting the DOJ.
So they don't want to do it again. If I could get one half, I know this is a controversial thing to do on any conservative program, but a mild here defense of the Mueller situation. People keep saying, well, nothing's coming out of it. Trump's gone off and nothing's coming out of it. Well, what was the purpose of this? If the purpose of this was to take down the Trump administration, then nothing's coming. It's not coming out that way. However, the purpose of it was actually to see how Russia influenced and attempted to influence our elections. Yeah. And we have seen individuals, organizations in Russia who have been specifically named. We've seen those processes and how those things actually worked. We obviously have seen other people, on the
25 Russians have been indicted.
25 Russians. Now, the fact that they're not going to prison because they all live in Russia is one thing, but at least we are getting a deep dive investigation into what they were actually doing. Not to mention that, things that were associated, we've seen with Manafort and some other stuff. You could also argue that there were some things that did happen with the administration. But going into this, I'm happy that a guy like Mueller is actually looking at the Russia part of this. I want to know what they're doing. I want to be able to prevent it next time. So I don't think it was a complete waste, and we should all be happy, right? Yeah. At the end of this, if Trump didn't do something that would get him indicted, great.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's sick of them doing their job, right? Yeah. I think what people are sick of and what I'm
speculation.
It's the media.
It's the overreach. It's the constant being lied to, and then the story's wrong, and then there's a fake news, and there's a correction. It's enough already.
But that's the media, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. It's right. Correct.
Correct.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, it's the media and it's Democrat leaders themselves themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, you got Maxine Waters, who's been calling for an impeachment for
Right.
forever.
And I'm sure a lot of people leaking information that has a agenda,
Yep.
and then the media jumps on it. So 100%. If I misled in that way, that's what I'm sick of. I'm sick of the media firestorm 24/7 telling me that the president's getting impeached tomorrow. Like, that's what I'm tired of. They're doing their job. They're going to get it done, and then they're going to step away, and then we're going to fight to the death like we always do.
Betrell and I when we were on radio earlier, we were talking about how this morning, Mika from Morning Joe, she apparently was finding this news out as she was reading it from the teleprompter, because you can see the look on her
Clicking.
face. Yeah, and she was like, sources say there will be no new indictments.
She was very chipper at the beginning. And in other news, sources are saying no new indictment.
So it was really interesting to see, that her find out in real time everything that they've been pushing this entire time. Oh,
I want to say I'm glad the investigation is going on because I want to put it to bed. I want to find out the truth. So I'm glad that it's going on. I'm glad Mueller's doing it, which is probably unpopular. It's unpopular because I will even push back on myself and be devil's advocate against myself for a second, because this did start, and let's not forget how this started, from a piece of opposition research. Steele dossier is what greenlit this to happen. So whatever you think about the Steele dossier, that's pretty jacked up. That unverified information was what launched this investigation.
yeah.
So, I mean, you do have a case for saying this shouldn't have happened, and it really wouldn't have happened if, and I don't know if you agree. I don't think you agree with this, what I'm about to say at all. But if Sessions would have actually done his job and not caved, this wouldn't have happened anyway. I didn't think that he had any reason at all to recuse himself. That was stupid.
Yeah, I disagree with that.
So, okay, I would love to get an argument going on that, because that made I think we've actually had this a couple times.
We have, so I would not care to get an argument about it again.
He recused himself because apparently he lied over his conversations with Russians, which happened in completely different capacities, which had nothing to do with Trump at all whatsoever. It was stupid. It was easily explainable. He just didn't have the guts to actually.
That feels like 18 years ago.
It totally does.
Oh
it's
my
like
gosh, it
it absolutely does.
Time is taking on a new feeling.
You're a new dad, really quickly, before we go to break. I don't know if it's just like my son, raising my son, or all of this going on with Trump I feel like I've aged 10 years.
I can't even remember Sessions being Attorney General.
I feel like
it's a bizarre world.
I feel like it's politics and not the kids. They always say when you have a kid, it ages you 10 years. I'm like, no, it's just 2020 coming up and all of the craziness. Back in a minute.
That is weird. Man, I had forgotten.
Just as a reminder, in case you missed it, I'm just here to self-promote, so I'm just going to go ahead and tell you that Jason and I filled in on Steve Deace today. You can go back and watch that on Blaze TV. You can also...
That's true.
And we did talk about that video.
Which is, by the way, it's Jason Howerton's fault that video exists. Basically, I mean, I guess it was posted one other time, but you're the one that popularized this.
I wouldn't say
video.
me. I would say Joe Rogan retweeted me and popularized it, but still. But
yeah, he does a good. Yeah,
my mentions are still all jacked up.
And you can go to Jason Howerton's Twitter to go see
more
that
content
video.
like that.
It's honestly the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life. And working in this world, you see a lot of crazy stuff. Nope, that one takes the cake, and it's not even close. We still got overtime coming up next. I mean, we're talking about AOC. So the party's just starting. You don't want to miss it. Catch it at blazetv.com. Use promo code NEWS and get $10 off your annual subscription.